Hello, and thanks for joining us today for the Whole Foods Magazine 35th Annual Retailer Survey 2012. I'm Jim Lovett, and joining me in the studio today to discuss the results of this year's survey is Kaylin Chiarello-Ebner, editor and associate publisher of Whole Foods Magazine. Thanks for being with us today, Kaylin.
Thanks, Jim. I'm looking forward to sharing our 2012 numbers with our audience.
Also joining us by phone is Jay Jacobowitz, the merchandising editor of Whole Foods Magazine and president and founder of Retail Insights. Thanks for being with us today, Jay.
Hi, Jim. I'm really excited to be here today to talk about this year's survey results, our largest ever.
So, Kaylin, just to jump right in, can you tell our listeners, how does the Whole Foods survey work?
Well, as Jay just said, 2012 was our biggest survey ever. In August, we asked natural product stores to tell us about their store sales and profits based on their July 1st, 2011 through June 30th, 2012 sales. We also asked stores about expansions, marketing budgets, and a bunch of other issues. We presented our analysis in the December 2012 issue of Whole Foods Magazine. You can check out the article online at WholeFoodsMagazine.com.
Who participated in this year's survey?
Well, we had a great turnout this year. We had participants from all over the country, with just under half from the West and about a quarter from the East. The rest of the stores were spread throughout the South, Midwest, and Rocky Mountains. Store locations were more or less evenly distributed among various market areas, from major metropolitan locations to large towns. Another factor to throw into the mix was the age of the business. Stores' average age was 21 years, 17 of which were under the current owner. While it was a slightly younger crowd than last year, our 2012 stores are clearly well established. I think this was a contributing factor in this year's robust sales numbers. As for store type, we had a good mix of stores. It included everything from smaller supplement-focused businesses to medium natural stores to larger grocers that focus heavily on fresh and other perishable foods. Several respondents were from multi-store businesses, including those with 5+ locations under their umbrellas. Because stores were so different in size and sales, we decided to break down our analysis according to how much perishable foods they sell. By perishables, we mean refrigerated foods, frozen foods, produce, and prepared foods. It's the view of Whole Foods Magazine that fresh foods is the biggest determinant of a store's size, foot traffic, and its gross sales. We saw this across all categories. Considering perishables is also the best way for stores to interpret how our results apply to their unique businesses.
Can you tell me, how big were these stores?
Altogether, stores made up about 1 million total square feet of lease area and $665 million in sales. That's more than we've ever tracked before. The average gross lease area, or GLA, for all stores was 5,300 square feet, of which 3,960 square feet was retail selling space. Stores generated the most income from perishable foods, followed by vitamins and supplements. About 43% of their sales came from perishables and almost a quarter from supplements. Remember, these stores are just non-public, independent retailers. They sell most of their products in physical stores as opposed to online. Our figures don't include some of the biggest members in the industry, like Whole Foods Market, Sprouts, Vitamin Shoppe, and GNC.
So, did stores have a good 2012?
I'd certainly say so. In fact, a huge number, 94% of stores, said their sales went up over the past year. The average increase was about 8.7%. This figure is the best that Whole Foods has collected in over 6 years. This isn't the end of our good news. For stores that saw a decline last year, that was just 6% of retailers, 2012 was the first time in years the amount of decline didn't dig a bigger hole. Here's what I mean. We noted a 12% decline in 2009, a 15% loss in 2010, and a 19% decrease in 2011 among stores reporting losses. Well, this year, sales only declined 7.5%.
And why do you think that was?
Well, for a while, we've been noting a survival of the fittest environment in the natural products industry. Independent natural retailing is not an easy game to play. There's competition from big natural stores like Whole Foods and Sprouts. We have mainstream supermarkets and drugstores selling natural and organic products at competitive prices. Even Costco and Amazon are threats. So this year's retailers are clearly strong and resilient. I guess that the pack of independent stores has been refined, and those that remain will positively shape the future of the natural products industry.
Well, that seems like good news. Can you give me some selling statistics for 2012?
Okay, sure. Let's start with sales by square footage. Average sales were about $680 per GLA square foot, and average sales by retail area was about $910 per square foot. But these numbers varied widely by store type. For instance, we found perishable-focused stores, those with 55+% perishable sales, earned very high sales per square footage, with over $1,000 per GLA square foot and nearly $1,700 per retail area square foot. As for supplements-focused businesses with fewer than 5 locations, annual sales were almost $350 per GLA square foot and $420 per retail area square foot. The pattern applied for other store types. The more the perishables, the higher the sales per square footage. The exceptions were the small supplement chains. Their sales per square foot were on par with the medium grocery chains. As for overall sales, the survey respondents averaged $3.6 million per store, with average gross profits of $1.36 million. Perishable-focused stores were well above the average at $15.5 million in sales. A linear trend was noticed through to the supplement-focused stores that averaged about $580,000 in 2012. Averaging all categories, 2012 net profit was about $174,000 per store. But we saw a big difference in profits by store type, especially small supplement stores, depending on how many locations they have. Those with less than 5 stores had profits of $45,500 per store, while chains with 5+ locations averaged almost $104,000. Meanwhile, the largest perishable stores cranked out over $560,000 in net profits. These figures are bolstered by the data we collected on foot traffic and average transaction. Stores had about 260 customers per day, with each transaction averaging $40.31.
So now, Jay, I'm going to turn to you. As a consultant to retailers looking to improve their businesses, does this mean small stores are in trouble?
Absolutely not, Jim. We were really encouraged by the results that we saw in the 2012 survey. So much so, in fact, as Kaylin mentioned, it's the largest survey ever for Whole Foods in its 35-year history. We actually had to break the category of supplement-focused stores down into 2 subcategories. Obviously, those stores, because they're focused on supplements, as you'd expect, don't have a large percentage of sales from perishables, like food stores with as much as 70% of sales from perishables. These stores that are focused on supplements, on the other hand, have 0 to 9% of their sales from perishables. We had so many respondents this year that we subdivided the category of 0 to 9% perishables into 2 subdivisions, those with less than 5 stores and those with 5 stores or more. There were several significant vitamin chains that responded to this year's survey. We found that both those types, less than 5 stores and 5 or more, were highly profitable. They had the highest percentage net profit of any of the other perishables categories, with stores who had less than 5 stores having nearly 8% in pre-tax net profit, 7.86%. Vitamin chain stores were even better run and even more efficient. They had just over 9% in pre-tax net profit. So, contrary to what you might think, the stores that are very focused, I think they get a benefit from having a simpler business model. You have to be very knowledgeable, of course, to sell supplements effectively, but you don't have to have as many different departments and as many different department managers as you would with a large food store. I think as a result of that and the smaller footprint, that allowed them to bring more dollars down to the bottom line. We also found in this year's survey emerging clear evidence that there is a distinct no man's land, if you will, between small supplement stores and large food stores. The data in this year's survey really told us a clear story that it's okay to do one or the other, but if you are a hybrid in between where you have some foods, but not a lot of foods, not enough to encourage shoppers to come in and do their weekly shopping, then you might want to think twice about your product mix. Specifically, what we found, Jim, was that in the 4,000 to 5,000 square foot arena, where you really don't need that much square footage to effectively sell vitamin E and other supplements, but you actually don't have enough room to have a full kitchen, to have a convincing produce department, a deli, and even a bakery. So what we found is the stores that had 10 to 19% perishables, that group had a bigger footprint in that sort of no man's land between, say, 4,000 and 5,000 square feet, where they had too much space to do supplements, but not enough space to be convincing in foods. We found really across most categories of performance, the metrics such as net profit, average transaction, rent costs, marketing costs, labor costs, and so forth, those stores really suffered because they were not as efficient as the small supplement stores, and they weren't drawing the big traffic counts of the larger food stores. From the standpoint of average transactions, it was quite interesting because it was grouped fairly closely. Again, in the small store category with 0 to 9% perishables, those with less than 5 locations had $28.50 as an average transaction, $28.50. Again, we saw that the chain stores, the vitamin stores, again, small stores with 0 to 9% perishables, but 5 or more locations were very, very efficiently run and had $34.73 as an average transaction. That was nearly, it was in the middle, but sort of certainly higher up. When we looked at the 10 to 19% perishable stores, they also had about a $28.47 average transaction, which was actually the lowest in the survey, and again, an indication of the lack of efficiency in that 10 to 19% perishables model. As we move up to the top of the chain, the largest food stores, those with 55% perishables, had a $52.13 average transaction, which shows you that not only do you have huge customer counts, but you also get the benefit of bigger transactions too.
So, would you advise supplement stores to start offering perishables for extra revenue or stick with what they know?
That's an interesting question, and of course, we've thought about it a lot. It's consistent with the findings in the survey. If you are going to go ahead and have perishables, you need to be bold and you need to have enough square footage to be convincing. What we see is that the stores that sort of back into more perishables, they've got a successful supplement store, maybe it's 1,500 square feet, maybe it's 2,500 square feet. They have an option on a space next door to their existing space, and they say, things are going well. I'm going to take another 1,000 or 1,500 square feet, and they move up into that 3,500, 4,000 square foot category, thinking that they're going to put in a kitchen or a juice bar, maybe some produce. That's where you get into trouble. It really was clear from the survey data that you need to be at least 6,000 square feet or more to be able to fit enough of the perishables categories into your store to make a big enough impression on shoppers that they can, in fact, come in and shop for dinner, for example, or make a stock-up shopping trip for the week. I would not advise the 1,000 or 1,500 square foot supplement store to change its stripes and become a perishables food store with anything less than 6,000 square feet.
Okay, do certain perishables categories attract shoppers better than others? Is there an ideal ratio of, say, produce to dry goods to refrigerated goods that stores should shoot for?
What we see in the overall food store universe, now this is including all conventional supermarkets as well, is that traditionally the traditional supermarket, conventional foods supermarket, had about 25% to 33% of its sales from perishables. In the 1980s and 1990s, Whole Foods markets upset the apple cart by having double that percentage of perishable sales, really breaking ground with the fresh food store. And essentially, the history has been that everyone in the food business is trying to catch up to Whole Foods. We see fresh foods coming in into every channel, including drugstores and even dollar stores. What we found was that you really needed more than 29%. You needed to get about 30% of your sales, at least, from perishables to begin reaching critical mass in the mind of the customer, where your customer counts would go up and your sales would go up, and you'd begin to benefit from that. So I would say that there's, from a particular department, it certainly needs several. You need produce, absolutely, if you're going to have a fresh impression. I think from many of the surveys that we've seen over the years tracking the conventional industry, shoppers think first of produce. Where can I get good produce for tonight's dinner? So that is a real driver of intention to shop, the produce department. After that, the choices become a little bit more optional. I think bakery would be far down on the list and would probably be the last thing I would do. A deli with a limited menu, serving maybe the lunch period and maybe grab and go for dinner would also make sense. Certainly, it goes without saying that you need enough refrigeration doors and freezer doors for the packaged items that every store typically sells in there, such as yogurt or frozen entrees or pizzas or what have you. You have to have enough of those to compete with the supermarkets, the conventional supermarkets that do a pretty good job with that now.
Kaylin, what about store brands? How influential was this factor to a store's success?
Well, I think in general, offering some private label options is a good thing. A store that offers supplements under its own name shows a certain level of expertise and confidence. If customers like your store brand, it's a no-brainer that they'll have to come back to you to restock. And of course, the margins can be pretty good too. This year's participants were strong believers in private label. About 64% of stores offer some form of private label. As a group, vitamin chain stores offered the most private labels, with 85% of the group selling at least 51 supplement SKUs under its own brand. In fact, 77% of this subset offered more than 200 private label SKUs. About 85% of the largest perishable-oriented stores had private label supplements, but far fewer SKUs, 25 to 50. Stores with the fewest private labels were supplement-focused retailers with 1 to 5 stores. 38% of that group had a store brand.
Jay, did you collect any data about how businesses are staffing their stores?
That's one of the real bright spots of this year's survey for 2012. Because the survey was, in fact, by far the largest that we had experienced in 35 years of Whole Foods survey, we were really able to take a look at the differences in labor force, and we saw distinct differences. Again, using our basic view of the world according to the perishables percentage of sales, the smallest supplement stores with 0 to 9% perishables needed the fewest number of full-time employees to run the store. And I think that I would draw readers' attention to a metric that we measured in this year's survey, full-time equivalents per 1,000 square feet. It's in Table 4, the labor table in the survey. This is extremely useful information that I don't think has been available anywhere else in the industry to this point. And I would point independent retailers to this and take a very, very careful look, because if you're planning to build a store and you're planning your product mix, this can act as a guide to help you figure out how much your labor is going to cost. Essentially, the smallest stores with 0 to 9% in sales from perishables needed 2 to 3 persons, full-time equivalents, per 1,000 square feet of store. At the other end of the spectrum, food stores that were 55% of sales from perishables needed over 6 people per 1,000 square feet. And that makes sense if you think about the people that might need to be in the meat department, or stocking the fish case, or working the deli counter. It just makes sense that you're going to need more people. It's more labor intensive. And so that was very, very clear in the data we saw this year because the survey was so large.
Kaylin, did stores invest in marketing themselves?
Yes, but the average spending on marketing and promotions was lowish at about 1.4% of their sales, or just over $49,000 per year. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. Our survey body was well established with decades of experience under their belts. Many feel word of mouth is their best marketing tool, and they don't need to spend a lot of money on expensive advertising. These guys are mainly investing in ways to maintain their customer base, not necessarily push for significant growth. Others also preferred social media networking, which is free or very inexpensive and can be really effective when done well.
Jay, I notice all these numbers cover only independent stores. What about organic and natural products sold outside this arena, like in mass market stores or public natural chains?
Well, Retail Insights, my company, makes its living figuring out the answer to that question. And we, in fact, annually track 8 distinct channels of food retailers in the U.S. that sell natural and organic products. At the end of the survey, readers can take a look at our 2012 retail universe for premium natural, organic food, supplement, and personal care sales, where we break down organic and natural food sales through the 8 distinct channels of retailer. We start with the supernaturals like WholeFoods, Sprouts, New Seasons, and Earth Fare. They have the largest market share in the industry at 26% this year, and they grew at 7.5% from 2011. Next down the list are what we're calling compact grocers. This is a term that Retail Insights coined. Compact grocers are small stores averaging around 10,000 square feet, whereas the supernaturals average nearly 30,000 square feet. The compact grocers include Trader Joe's, Natural Grocers by Vitamin Cottage, and other stores that have about 10,000 square feet. They control nearly 18% market share of the industry, and they grew a whopping 35% over 2011. Then we come to the conventional supermarkets like Kroger, Safeway, Wegmans, and Publix. There are nearly 30,000 of these around the country, which is why they have the next highest market share at 15.8%. Interestingly enough, however, this category declined 1.3% from 2011 to 2012, and that's mostly because this group of stores has been overstored. Certain chains are struggling and have been closing stores, and so we've actually seen square footage come out of the conventional supermarket channel. Next, right on their heels, comes the independent retailers and co-ops of the type of store that responded to Whole Foods' 35th annual survey. They control 15.6% market share of the industry, just 0.2% behind the conventional supermarkets, and they grew at nearly 4% this year. I anticipate that in 2013, the independents will actually overtake the conventional supermarkets, so we'll be waiting to see those results next year. The last 4 channels where natural and organic products are sold are pharmacies like Walgreens, CVS, and Rite Aid. They control just under 7% market share, and they actually also declined as well, 1.3% 2011 to 2012, which was as a result of the struggles that Walgreens had mid-year. Then we have club stores like Costco, Sam's, BJ's Warehouse. They control 6.1% market share of the industry, and they grew a whopping 20.7%. That's mostly because of the aggressive stance that Costco takes on organic and natural, and also Sam's Club is expanding this category as well. Mass merchandisers such as Target and Walmart make up the 7th channel, and they control 6% and grew at 3% from 2011 to 2012. And finally, vitamin chain stores like the Vitamin Shoppe, GNC, and Vitamin World bring up the rear with 5.6% market share, but they also grew a very respectable 8.5% 2012 over 2011. Overall, to compare organic and natural to the entire universe of conventional foods, we are, as an industry, 9.18% of the total food dollar. To bring that into a dollar focus, it's almost $54 billion of organic and natural food sales compared to the $584 billion total food store universe.
Jay, do you have any final comments for our listeners?
With the 2012 survey from Whole Foods, we saw nearly 100% of the respondents said they grew. And the small percentage, I think it was 6%, who said that they were not growing, lost just 7% of sales. So I agree with Kaylin. I think that we have seen a shakeout. I think the survival of the fittest is, in fact, what's going on here. The stores that remain in place, the independent retailers that remain in place, are lean and mean. They are well managed. They are growing well. And I believe that we're going to continue to see this as the overall U.S. economy continues to pick up strength and momentum, that it will float all boats, as they say, and that we'll continue to see the independent retail channel gain momentum compared to all other channels in 2013.
Kaylin, is there anything you would like to say in closing?
Whole Foods Magazine has been publishing its annual survey for 35 years, and it continues to grow and get stronger every year thanks to our participants. A huge thank you to the retailers that have participated in the past. I hope you'll continue sending in your questionnaire because without you, this analysis wouldn't be possible. And if you haven't participated in the past, please watch for our email and fax in August 2013. We'd love to have your input.
Kaylin Chiarello-Ebner and Jay Jacobowitz, thank you very much for being with us today. You've given us all a lot of great information. If listeners would like more information, they can see the December 2012 issue of Whole Foods Magazine or visit WholeFoodsMagazine.com.